Welcome to New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.
All right, welcome back to Knicks Weekly Live with New York Got Game. Dexter, Henry, Bryan, Fonseca here. Good one to talk about this week. Knicks, they haven't played in 3 days. They played last on Sunday, got a nice win over the Magic. That was really good. But the matchup this week is one that all Knicks fans have had circled on their calendar all year. That is the return of Karl-Anthony Towns to Minnesota, where they will face the Timberwolves. Bryan, I see you smiling and nodding. It is always an emotional return when players go back to the team that drafted them or traded them away. But the other side of this too is this is the first time in a regular season game that Knicks fans get a look at Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. And we're going to get right to this. This is all we need to talk about right now, top of the show. Julius Randle today was asked a plethora of questions about this game, how he would feel about it. Julius Randle brought a certain kind of energy. I'll let you guys be the judge. Take a listen.
You just try to treat it like any other game.
I will.
How?
Play basketball.
It's got to mean something. I mean, you spent a long time, and not only, I mean, you were the face of the franchise for years here.
Another game.
So like, when you played the Lakers, it was more than another game.
Right.
What's the difference here?
I'm 30 years old.
There's been a lot.
Game against help with that at all?
I didn't play.
You were there, but like being on the team.
No, I didn't play.
Okay. That sounded to me, and if you're watching, excuse me, let us know in the comments what you thought of Julius Randle's comments. But to me, that sounded like somebody that was holding back a little bit, that might want to say a little bit more about a guy trading. Look, I was just talking with our producer, Jeff Stansbury, about this before we got on. Julius Randle was traded 2 days before the start of training camp. The last time Knicks fans really saw Julius Randle, and the media did before that, I was there in Harlem with him at the Earl Monroe School that was doing the groundbreaking for. And listen, it's tough getting traded, man. It is tough getting traded 2 days before the start of training camp. I know people are going to say, oh, man, they make millions. No, it's a business, but it's still tough. Now, Ryan, here's my question to you. These things can go many different ways. Players playing their old teams, they can have something to prove. Sometimes that can go really well. Sometimes you might do too much. You know what I mean? You might come out and try to do a little too much. What did you make of Julius Randle's comments, and do you think he's going to be trying to give the Knicks these buckets tomorrow night?
He sounds like a man who's been in New York media and is very familiar with how to handle.
Yes.
You know, like he sounds hardened and sounded like he clearly went in there with a game plan. Like he was going to one-word answer all of this. You knew that he was. In terms of the basketball piece, like yeah, he's going to come out firing. Like I'd be disappointed in 12 attempts. I want to see like 28 attempts. I just want to see him just chuck it up every single time. Like, you know what I mean? I want to see that more so against the Knicks in the Garden. But like, I think that, yeah, Randle, like he could say what he wants, but I mean, I'll look at his over. I'll take a peek. You know what I mean? I'll take a peek at the over if I can get field goal attempts. You know what I mean? I'll look at that too. That is available on the select fantasy apps or whatever the case may be. But I mean, like, come on, like we know.
I don't believe any of these players when they say it's just another game.
Yeah, of course not.
You're lying.
He's smiling too.
Lying. It's not just another game. Like, and listen, and we'll have, just to let everybody know, joining us on the show, we'll have Michael Grady, play-by-play TV voice of the Timberwolves, will be joining us shortly, and then we have Stefan Bondy. Who the Knicks beat writer for the New York Post, our coworker, will be joining us shortly. And Steph asked one of the questions in there. He asked how it was different from when he faced the Lakers for the first time. And I mean, a fair answer by Julius Randle saying that he's older. He's 30 years old. That he's more mature.
I like that answer.
But
I like that answer.
I think you're mature enough to know that this game does mean something. He's going to want to show out for sure. to say it doesn't mean anything. It's not just another game.
But Dex, he's telling us that without telling us that. Like, I don't want to sound like media guy who's reading too much into it. But like, I mean, come on. Like he has to.
But just come out, say it.
No, I don't.
Just say it.
But I think he said it without saying it, though.
Say it.
What he gave us was enough, so much so that we're leading the show with it. You know what I mean? Like,
just say it and say it with your chest. That's all I'm asking. Say it with your chest. Does anybody else feel me on this? If you're gonna say it, because Bryan, you know this about me. You know me a long time.
Yes,
I am not here for the passive aggressive nonsense. Not here for it. Don't care. If you're gonna say it, say it with your chest, or just don't say nothing at all.
I've never been excited to see Julius Randle post-ups in my life more than this. Never.
Are the Timberwolves fans going to be excited about this?
No, absolutely not. I like betting the Knicks might be smart. Is what I would say. Depending on what it is. I actually got to check the line. I would assume they're slightly favored, but
look, this is going to be a good game. I was out there last year when the Knicks played the Timberwolves. That did not go the Knicks' way that night. But that was a fun night at the Target Center. Shout out to my guy Michael Grady, hooked me up with some really nice tickets out there.
The Timberwolves are 2.5-point favorites.
Okay,
right now.
Interesting line. I'm excited about this game. It's going to be a good one. But since we're excited about this game, we do not have a lot of time to waste. We have our first guest of the night. It is my good friend. He's one of the best play-by-play voices in the NBA. You catch him doing the games on television for the Timberwolves. I have to ask him when he comes up here if he's freezing his ass off in Minnesota, because I know it gets cold. Julius Randle said earlier today it was -4 the other day. Welcome, my guy, Michael Grady, to the show. Grady, what's going on, bro?
Oh, my God, fellas, what's good? What's good? How you doing?
Good. Good, man. How's the weather out there? You staying warm?
Yeah, see, that's what we go to first. First thing we go to with Minnesota is the weather. It's cold as hell. You know it's cold as hell.
Yo, I will say, last year when I came out there and kicked it with you, it was not that bad. It was like in the 40s. It wasn't terrible.
I told you, I've told you before. I was joking with Bondy about this earlier. I've never appreciated 30 degrees more than I have since moving here to Minnesota. I went to Atlanta for a couple of days and checked out that Giants exhibit, Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats at the Hart Museum in Atlanta, and caught up with family. Then came home. It was like 50 degrees in Atlanta. Came back home. It was -2. And then the next couple of days it got up to 30. And so when it hits 30, it's like, oh man, let me take this. Like, come on now, it's nice out. It's nice out. It's nice. A vibe. So no, it's cold. It's cold. That's what it is. But if you dress for it, it ain't no thing.
It's 50 degrees in New York right now. It's raining.
Oh, you wild.
But it's 50 degrees in New York right now.
Yeah, yo, it feels like summer, Grady. It feels like summer. It feels like summer right now. Well, compared to you,
it'll be brick soon. You know.
It was. It's just for whatever reason. Well, not whatever reason. I mean, climate change and stuff. But it was 57 yesterday. Now down to 50, and it'll be like in the low 30s this weekend. So
yeah,
typical New York weather in the fall.
No question. Crazy.
Near winter.
No question.
But Mike, we got a game to talk about of some I won't say epic proportions, but kind of big. Cat returning to Minnesota. What's the talk been like in Minneapolis around Cat's return here? Because there's no way you can say it. He's the second greatest player in franchise history, right behind Kevin Garnett. When you look at what he's accomplished, Anthony Edwards probably will pass that at some point. But what's the anticipation for his return? What do you think the reception is going to be like for him? What's the vibes out there?
It's gonna be all love. It's gonna be all love. We know in New York, guys come and go all the time. That's kind of the thing with big markets, right? We've seen that with Julius Randle twice. We've seen it with D'Angelo Russell twice. If a franchise in a big market can get somebody better, see it. We moving on. But in these small markets, when you have a guy who buys into the community, who buys into what the team is all about and embraces the franchise and the community, man, that's love. And through the ups and downs, the frustrations with this game, the highlights, the great moments, 60-point performances, deep playoff run a season ago, rookie of the year. Through all those things, man, it just really connected and bonded him with the Minneapolis community. And I think that for him to not ask for a trade, even through some of the lowest moments of his career, and to just want to build something and be real about wanting to build something special in Minnesota, even though it didn't work out, I think the fans are going to put so much energy into showing their appreciation to him before that ball is tipped up. And there'll be another moment in game as well, highlighting some of the things that he's done in the community. It's going to be a special time. It's going to be a special time. We'll see. What I'm curious about is how he plays through all that emotion, because all the love that he's going to receive from the fans, he's going to have that showing of love back to the fan base, because they've meant a lot to him, and have been riding with him through all different moments of his career. So I'm curious if he's because he's been playing at a near MVP level this season. Is he going to be sharp and come out and just crush it? Will he be a little bit off because the emotions of the moment and everything? That's what I'm excited to see.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited to see that.
Yeah, sure. I want to see that. I also want to see the Julius Randle piece of this, Grady, because we just played some sound right before we welcomed you back in, and Julius Randle is basically trying to play. I mean, you were there, you know this, but people who maybe checking in late, Julius Randle is basically trying to play off like this is just another game, given the media trained, I know the New York reporters well. I'm not going to play this game with them sort of dance or whatever the case may be. But I mean, could you speak to the Julius Randle piece of this? And while it's not in New York yet, but playing against his former squad in a meaningful regular season game.
Yeah, the feelings there. Well, one, players lie. Players have me.
Players lie, coaches lie.
Players lie.
lie.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's just a part of it. No, this is a team that he watched, go on a little run in the postseason a season ago with him hurt. He was having a tremendous year. Unfortunately, went down with the injury. Who knows how far they could have gotten had he been available for his guys. And so he had to sit with that, and then watching them lose to Indiana in the postseason, and then the offseason rehab, getting himself ready. And then just before camp is to start, he's dealt. And then see the way the team is doing right now from afar. As a competitor, if that doesn't get your juices going, when the guys that you used to hoop with, even though they're not responsible for you leaving, when the guys that you used to ball with and lace them up with every night and go to battle with, when they're coming to your building now on your new team, you want to show out. You gotta want to show out. You know what I mean? So we can play it off like it's just another game, but guys have to do whatever they got to do to get in their mental, to get in there, get in that right frame of mind. If you add weight to the moment, like, this is big. This is big, Bondy. Like if you get into that mode, and then you start 1 for 10, it just adds a lot of unnecessary attention and pressure that maybe you don't want, Yeah. And so this is just kind of protecting his mental as he goes into a game that undoubtedly is big. He didn't play in the game in the preseason, but that game that they had in the preseason at the Garden, Knicks and Timberwolves, was like a regular season game.
Yeah.
Like it was not a preseason game. That was not, I'm trying to get reps and trying to find a rhythm. I'm coming for your throat. I'm talking trash. Let's go. And so I'm expecting a similar type battle tomorrow night.
And it comes down to something that all of us, everyone watching, everyone listening, and all of us up here could identify with. Everyone wants to show out in front of their ex. Everybody just wants to do it. So, I mean,
but
even when they moved on and you moved on,
here's my thing. You gotta be like Grady said, right? If you're gonna do that, you better be ready, because you can't. If you're gonna shout in front of the ex, you can't have a failure. You can't have it go wrong. If you flop,
if you showing up at the same venue as your ex and you know it going in, then you going to the mall. You going to wherever you going to shop. You ain't bringing out clothes that's been seen before.
Yes.
You get some fresh kicks.
Yes.
You're gonna get a fresh outfit. Your haircut gonna be on point. No, that's exactly what we're gonna see tomorrow night from both sides.
Can't catch you slipping out there. Michael Grady joining us, TV play-by-play voice of the Timberwolves. Grady, what about this team now adjusting to life after Cat and now playing with Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo? Because I remember texting you after the trade went down, and both of us just were like, "Wow," we were just both shocked. You didn't have much to say, but just wow. What's the adjustment period like? Because it's been on both sides, but how has that been working for them with Julius and Donte as part of the rotation?
On the Timberwolves side, it took a minute, and to give them some grace, some of the struggles that the team had early on had nothing to do with the new guys getting adjusted. Some of the guys who have been a part of this team were having issues for whatever reason, things that had been drilled and pounded into their brain a season ago that helped them get to the Western Conference Finals. They just weren't doing those same kind of things. And so you're integrating two new pieces in Randle and DiVincenzo, and then at the same time, you're not really doing your part. And then all of a sudden, things just started to click. And it really starts for this team on the defensive side of the ball. They were number one in the NBA in defensive rating a season ago. They started looking atrocious on the defensive end to start this season. But since November 29th, they've been number one in defensive rating again. They held the Lakers to 80 points. They've held the Clippers to 80 points. They've held 6 of the last 7 opponents to 92 or fewer points. So they're getting back to what made them so successful a season ago. And that's buckle down on the defensive side of the ball and getting buy-in from everybody. There was worry at the start of the season that guys may be out for their own agendas. Julius Randle, of course, has the player option heading into next summer. Naz Reid has an opportunity to make some big money. And there are things that look good on paper as far as stats are concerned that may not necessarily help the team win. And so if you just out for your points and you're kind of neglecting other parts of your game, that's going to impact winning. If you're hustling for loose balls, if you're sacrificing in terms of defensive assignments and all that type of stuff, setting screens on the offensive end, not necessarily concerned about what your numbers look like, that's going to help the team turn the corner. And at least over the course of this last couple of weeks, they've started to do that. And if they can continue down that road, then they'll continue to look like the team that we saw a season ago. If they start to go out for their own individual agendas again, that's when things will start to go backwards.
So you mentioned defense, Mike, because one of the guys I feel like when I'm watching the Timberwolves that really seems to have sparked the defense within this month is Jaden McDaniels. He started off a bit shaky, but he's been looking he's been looking like what we know him to be, right? On the ball stopper. Do you see that as the biggest change to the Wolves defense, or is it just other guys getting their act together too?
No, 100%. Like he's the quarterback of the defense. I would say Rudy Gobert is the quarterback of the defense, but Jaden McDaniels is just as important to what the Timberwolves do on the defensive side of the ball, because he's a ball stopper on the perimeter and he is a ball hawk on the perimeter. And, he was playing coy about this maybe a couple of weeks ago, asked him what changed for him. Was there a game? What changed? And he was like, I don't know. I guess I just decided to start playing defense. Like, okay. But he's balling out of his mind. And I couldn't help but wonder why he was a little bit off at the start of the season. There was so much talk about the work that he put in, and he put a ton of work on his game, the most work that he's ever put on his game in the offseason. But we just didn't see it at the start. And I couldn't help but wonder if just the arrival of DiVincenzo kind of impacted him mentally in any way, because before he knows he's the guy and getting run. If he gets in foul trouble, then a Nickeil Alexander-Walker, for example, would check into the game. But now I couldn't help but wonder that if he's missing a couple of shots, is he looking over his shoulder like is DiVincenzo about to check in? And so I just felt like as his shot wasn't falling, it was impacting him doing the things that we all grew accustomed to seeing him doing on the defensive side of the ball.
Right.
And so at some point that just shifted, and we're seeing whether the shot is falling or not, he's just a menace on the defensive side of the ball. He's rebounding better. He had his first career double-double, which is kind of mind-blowing for him in year 5, but he had his first career double-double in their last win against San Antonio, and he has 9 steals in the last 2 games. So he's been an animal, to your point, and it's certainly helped the team turn the corner.
Yeah, absolutely has.
Anthony Edwards, I want to ask you about Grady, because now he's evolved not just on the court, but as a leader. And over the last season or so, there was like, hey, wanting to basically play for Cat to some degree and make sure that Cat is comfortable. Are you seeing some of the same things with him and Julius Randle and that relationship? And is there a chance like, hey, he's telling Julius Randle, like, I want to win this game against your old team for you in this game that we're about to see?
Yeah, I look. Ant is a dog, no matter who they're playing. And a good team comes into town, and he was the main one barking in that preseason game. Ant was the main one going off, hitting big time buckets. And again, I just can't. I remember I was working the game, and I just couldn't believe the intensity of it. The Knicks had the Pacers in one of their early regular season games,
Right.
and the intensity wasn't even near what it was in that preseason game with the Timberwolves. And Anthony Edwards was a big reason for that. He's just an animal out there on the court. He not only wants to beat you, he wants to take your heart out. And it's an old school mentality when it comes to competing and battling out there on the floor, to where you're wondering, I was just watching the other day, the Cat Williams special, where he was like, "You angry at breakfast?" And he is a fun-loving dude, but when that ball is tossed up, he's angry at breakfast. He's that kind of guy. And so I really feel that I saw a change in him when he started competing with Team USA. He was in the FIBA World Cup 2 years ago, and of course won a gold medal with Team USA in Paris last summer. And those experiences, but particularly, I was just talking to Ty Lue about this, particularly that first experience when he was playing with Jalen Brunson JJ and Austin Reeves and all those guys. Ant was supposed to come off the bench, and he was like, "Nah, I'm not."
Yeah.
Not with these dudes. No,
Yeah.
no, I'm not coming off the bench. And he emerged as one of the leaders on that team, and I think he learned a lot about that. And Ty Lue had a conversation with him. He was like, "Do you want to be the best player in the league, or do you want to be the best scorer in the league?" And Ant said, "I want to be the best player." And he said, "Well, if you want to be the best player, then you have to make the guys around you better." And I feel like he really took that to heart, and we've seen a different Ant from that point on. He still has his mistakes. He's still learning. But we're talking about a dude that's 22, 23 years old. You know what I mean? So he's still figuring things out. But his willingness to learn, his desire, that fire inside of him to want to be the best player that he can be, is what makes him a fun watch night in and night out. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was considered one of the best dunkers in the NBA, right? And now he's leading the NBA in three-point shots made. Like, if that isn't a testament to his raw ability and the work that he puts in the gym, I don't know what is.
Right. And you've talked about like their ability to, I guess, turn this around to some degree, because the start wasn't great. They've gotten closer to their identity, and their defense is now fourth in the NBA for the regular season, considering where it started. I would say that's a tremendous success. How close do you think they are to figuring this out completely? Like, how close do you think the Timberwolves are to, I guess, their final form, for lack of a better way of phrasing it?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see, but they have some good games coming up. We're going to see the Golden State Warriors with Dennis Schroeder coming up on Saturday. This Knicks game, of course, not to get ahead of myself, this Knicks game is going to be massive because of the way the Knicks play and how tough they are, and what an emotional game that's going to be, and you're in front of your home crowd. So I'll be curious to see how they play tomorrow. Then Golden State, who they split 2 games in San Francisco, and Draymond Green was dunking and trash talking and all this other type of stuff. So now it's the Wolves' opportunity for some get back. They've got a game with Atlanta, and we know Atlanta's been playing really good basketball. So there's some opportunity here with the upcoming schedule against some very difficult opponents to prove that you've turned the corner. And they've played some teams lately that didn't really fight back. They faced LeBron without. They faced the Lakers without LeBron. They had some other matchups that kind of worked in their favor, a shorthanded Clippers team. And so I'm curious, when they're facing adversity and they have a team that literally has all the skill to punch back, how does this Timberwolves team respond? I didn't like the way they responded with adversity earlier in the season, but this is going to be a really true test to see how they can respond to adversity, because these are some tough matchups. And not only that, the defense, I feel, is legit, but they still have to figure out the offense. One thing that's kind of been an issue is hero shots, and sometimes Ant gets a little carried away with an ISO game. Julius gets carried away with an ISO game. And when they're sharing the ball and moving the ball, that's when they're at their best offensively, with everybody getting touches. And so if they're not doing any ball stopping and the ball is moving, we'll see some improvement on the offensive side. And that'll help some of the lows that we've seen from them over the course of the past handful of games, despite the fact that they've been winning. But this is a huge opportunity over the course of the next few weeks to close out the year.
Do you think that stylistically, they're, I guess, a problem for the Knicks, given that we've seen the Knicks, though the offense has been really good, they've struggled against some teams like the Orlando Magic, for example, have defended them very well, even when shorthanded. Or the Atlanta Hawks recently, which was a loss that a lot of people were concerned about, defended them well for the entire game in what turned out to be a lower scoring affair than I think a lot of people thought. And now that the Timberwolves are rounding into this shape defensively, do you think stylistically, like, it could be a nightmare for the Knicks, where it seems like they have some answers to solve some of the problems that the Knicks could provide offensively, with Karl-Anthony Towns being one of those problems?
I don't know about nightmare. I think the big thing is I think the more physical team is going to win. I'm very curious how the officials are going to officiate this game, because Jaden McDaniels, who I'm sure is going to see plenty of time on Jalen Brunson, if he gets in foul trouble, that's an issue. Now coming off the bench is a Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's a tremendous defender in his own right. Don't sleep on him. But Brunson has a physicality advantage against him. So if McDaniels can stay out of foul trouble, that's advantage Minnesota. The one thing that I'm curious about, though, is I really feel like Josh Hart is a X factor, and he's not a guy that they're drawing up plays for, but he's a rim crasher in the way that if the Timberwolves get caught sleeping, there's going to be a number of second chance opportunities where I feel like Josh Hart could absolutely take advantage of. And so getting a body on him, whoever has that assignment, is going to be important. And if Cat is playing on the perimeter and shooting threes, then of course, depending on how the matchups go, if it's Gobert, that's kind of territory where, you'd rather have him roaming around the basket. And so to stretch him out, out there on the perimeter, if Towns is firing threes, could be something that works in New York's favor if he's knocking them down. So this one's kind of a chess match that I'm excited to see how it goes down. I just hope the officials don't get in the way. I think it has to be a chance to be a tremendous ball game.
Yeah, I think this has a chance to be a really good one. I'm really excited about it. I think that a key will be rebounding for sure, Grady. I think that's definitely going to be a key in this one. Where do you think this Wolves team is right now in terms of feeling like they can win a championship? You talked about how the next couple of weeks are crucial, but this is a team that was in the Western Conference Finals, right? They've got a lot of aspirations of getting back there and further. Where do you feel like this team is right now, or is it just about finding that new identity and building as they go forward?
It's about finding a new identity and building, but for those who watched the NBA Cup final and felt like OKC's going to run away with this thing, it looked like there's some holes. It looked like there's some holes in their game. If they're not hitting shots, they're as vulnerable as anybody. And I love OKC because they're young, they're tough, they're feisty. And I hate that they had that kind of showing on that big of a stage, because they're certainly better than what they showed.
Yep.
But if you're anybody else in the West, you're like, oh. It doesn't matter who you are in the West. I mean, you could, whether you're Denver, whether you're Dallas, whether you're Phoenix, whether you're, you could be Minnesota. I'm leaving folks out, but it's up for grabs. It's really up for grabs. And so I think in order to really be successful, don't get caught up in all that. Get caught up in and focus on your identity and what's it going to take to really solidify that identity and take your game to another level, to where you're playing the way that you should be playing night in and night out. And if you're able to do that, you should be right where you want to be at the end of the season. They've already tricked off a bunch of games to start the season. So if they get to play in the way that they want to play, by the end of the year, there's still a chance that they could be right where they want to be. Because again, I still think OKC is tough and will be right there at number one in the West, barring any other injuries. And of course, they're going to get Chet back at some point. They're going to be a load to deal with. But anybody in the West, any of these elite teams in the West, they absolutely have a shot, including Minnesota. And it would be curious. I hate to play the whole trade conversation. It seems like we get too caught up in like, if this team gets this move or makes this that move or whatever, I don't want to get caught up in that instead of appreciating what we're seeing right in front of us. But there'll certainly be some opportunity there if in the process of figuring out the identity, if they feel like certain pieces don't fit, or we need this or we need that. There's going to be some opportunities there to improve the team, but it's going to be an arms race for sure.
I guess last thing for me, Grady, what you talked about Cat and how he looks, right? He said he played like an MVP like this year. I'd agree. If the Knicks record's probably a little bit better, you might see his name a little bit more in that, at least on offense. What do you think this Knicks team could be with Cat? You watched him up close and personal for 2 seasons. What do you think this Knicks team could be with Cat, especially with the way he's hooping right now?
They can be right. I'm happy to see the East is starting to toughen up a little bit. I mean, there's still teams that were waiting to come around, but it was kind of a laugh factory to start the season, the Eastern Conference as a whole. But now teams are starting to toughen up. Milwaukee put themselves back in the conversation with them winning the NBA Cup.
Yep.
Of course, Boston is the cream of the crop as the defending champions. Give them their due, but as time goes on and the Knicks continue to solidify their identity and guys get comfortable in their roles and what they're doing, the Knicks have a chance to be right there. Only issue is the depth and the fact that they don't go that deep and they're playing guys heavy minutes, and one injury could impact things. And depending on who it is, it could impact things dramatically. So that's the only question mark, where again, a team like Boston, I mean, they just got so many guys that they can throw at you and they can withstand injuries. We've already seen that earlier in the season with Porzingis. So, but I felt going in, and I remember talking about this with Doris Burke, that everything is right there in front of Cat that he needs to be successful. Like, this is the perfect situation for him. He could go back to playing the center position. He's close to home. There's a need for him there. He has that familiarity with Tibbs. The things that he brings to the table are needs for the New York Knicks, and it's certainly looked that way thus far. I think there's been a little bit too much conversation about the pressure in New York, and I feel like Bridges has more pressure on him than a Karl-Anthony Towns, because Bridges was traded for 5 first-round draft picks. You know what I mean? So it's like if he's missing jump shots, you know what I'm saying? It's like 5 first-round picks. Whereas with Cat, it's a different thing, and I just feel like they're putting him in good spots to succeed, and I'm happy for him, man. I'm rooting for him. He was good to me during my short time so far here in Minnesota, and I want to see him succeed, and I want to see him do well. And man, I can't believe I'm saying all this about the Knicks, man. I grew up a Pacers fan, and I was in I was in Brooklyn for so long. Brooklyn got my heart, man. But I got love for New York as a whole, and as I get older, like, just the nostalgia for the Knicks is kind of overtaking the hatred that I had back in the day. So, and the connection to Cat and all that too. So
to be fair, I mean, like, you mentioned that Karl-Anthony Towns has his perfect situation. I mean, if it doesn't look that way in the playoffs, you know what's going to happen. Like, what's going to happen in this city.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
That's the thing. Look, and that's kind of that. I hate that we kind of gloss over it, that we all kind of gloss over an 82-game schedule. But you're right. At the end of the day, for all the people saying, he's balling out of control like this, it's a win for the Knicks. Knicks won the deal. Mm-hmm. Look, it only matters if you're successful in late April.
People ain't going to care about December,
Grady.
Grady.
In June. That's what it is. And that was part of the reason, right? That was part of the reason that, it's one of the things that they had to look at in Minnesota. And I'm sure the guys would have wanted to see them run it back. But for that price tag, do you feel like he can get you over the hump and win you a championship, alongside? And I think the price tag was the bigger deal. But it was a tough decision. It was a tough decision. And I know the guys would have wanted to see them, run it back. But now it's in New York, and they put all their eggs in that basket between him and Mikal, and they have to produce. They have to produce. Otherwise, Otherwise, the rhetoric's going to be real different in the spring.
I do think it's an interesting point you've made. I haven't heard people say that much, that there's more pressure on Mikal. I think it's a fantastic point, because you're right. Every time he's missing a shot, he's thinking about,
Oh,
man.
They
traded 5 first-round picks for me, right?
5 first-round draft picks, bro.
Right. I hear you, bro. And I also want to let the audience know,
round.
I do have to let the audience know, I have never heard Grady talk this nicely about the Knicks. You know, though that he grew up a Pacers fan. I've never heard him talk this nice about the Knicks ever. He was talking really nice. But Grady, I know I want to share with people what was a dope moment for you, because I talked to you about it and I saw you tonight. You did the Knicks home opener on ESPN against the Pacers. I know that was a dope moment for you growing up as a Pacers fan and getting to do that. And for people who don't know, Grady also does work for ESPN on national broadcast. Talk to me, what was that? What was that like? I know it was special for you. I mean, I sent you a message for that. I know it was special, but what was that like because with all the hate you had for the Knicks, it didn't show in the broadcast because you're a true professional. But
again. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm weak, man. Maybe I'm soft or something like that, man. Like that hatred. Man.
You got older. We're grown. We don't do that no more.
It's like we're grown. Maybe that's just what it is, man. But I do, man. And I know my Pacers people and my Nets folks will hate me saying that. But I have so much respect for the Garden, because I just feel it impacted my love for the game, I think, is what I'm realizing as I got older. Seeing Reggie Miller do his thing out there, and like I don't remember, like, as far as Pacers Knicks moments, like how many do we remember at Market Square Arena? We don't really remember Knicks Pacers moments at Market Square Arena. Now, from a Knicks perspective, John Starks had a big game after Reggie Miller had one of his dramatic moments, but for the most part, all those big games and big moments and stuff like that took place at the Garden. So for me, watching as a youngster and hearing that organ over and over again, it's a special place. And I remember my first game that I did as a sideline reporter there at the Garden. My first play-by-play game that I did at the Garden, Cam Thomas led a 28-point comeback at the Garden. I was doing the game with my homie Sarah Kustak, and that's still one of the best games that I've ever been a part of and called. And so I didn't even think about it at first, but I told somebody and it hit me, and it might have been you. It was a couple people that were just like, "Yo, this is dope, man. Pacers Knicks, like this is what you grew up on." And I got kind of emotional in that moment, man, because it's kind of full circle, because we're all blessed to do the things that we're able to do, man. And
Facts.
For me to be a kid in front of the television and watching, Reggie go at Patrick Ewing, and then to grow up and be able to announce a game with those two teams, it's special. It's special, man, and it's a moment that I'll never forget. The game was trash, but
that was not a good game.
It was a moment. It was not a good game, but it was a moment that will always be precious to me, for sure.
Nah, man, you did a great job on the call. You do a great job as always with the Timberwolves. Everybody, that is Michael Grady, TV play-by-play announcer for the Timberwolves. You can also catch him on ESPN. Grady, I will see you soon, because I will be getting out to Minneapolis at some point, and it's going to be freezing. It's not going to be like the last time. I got to bring my heavy coat this time.
Heavy coat. Stefan Bondy got a heavy coat. Right. I can ready to talk to him, see if he's prepared for this Minnesota cold.
I will ask Bondy when he comes on if he's got his coat. He's a good traveler though, so I expect him to be great. Bro, thank you so much. We appreciate you for joining us. I will see you soon. Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you, fellas. Appreciate you guys.
All right, Grady.
That is Michael Grady, great play-by-play voice for the Timberwolves. And he just mentioned the next guy who will be joining us, the great New York Post Knicks beat writer, my guy Stefan Bondy. Hopefully he's not freezing his behind off in Minneapolis. Steph will join us now. Steph, what's going on, bro?
Hey, what's up, man? Is Grady still there, or is he gone? Because
he's gone. He left now.
He owes me a restaurant recommendation. He told me this restaurant. He's like, I'm gonna text you the name.
I think I know what he told you, because I think we went there last time I was out there. Was it Bar La Grassa?
No, it was an Asian restaurant.
No.
He mentioned a bunch, and I was like, I like the Asian one. He was like, I'll text you the name, but I haven't heard from him yet.
All right, he's got. I'll text him and tell him he's got to hook
All right.
you up at the restaurant. Is it cold out there, Steph?
It is, but here's a good thing about Minnesota in the setup. The hotel is such that you don't have to leave. You never have to go outside. You just there's a tunnel that you take from the hotel straight to the arena.
Yep.
So I'm living fine. I'm never gonna see the cold. The only time I see the cold is from when I walk from my hotel to the Uber and from the Uber to the airport. I'm not messing with it.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Those tunnels between the buildings and the hotels are. It's really you know why they built them in Minnesota, so people don't have to freeze their asses off. So there you
go.
It's not bad. Thanks for joining us, bro. You were at availability today, so you were part of the contingent that asked Julius Randle about this game, and if it matters to him. Now, Julius Randle came out and said it's just another game. Are you like us, where you don't believe him? Because I don't believe that.
No, I mean, listen, it's highly personal for him. I think his whole gist today was, I don't care what you ask me, I'm not going to talk about this. And that was really that was his motivation behind today. And he, no matter what you asked him, we tried to get him going. He was, now granted, he was smiling and he was playful about it, but it is a stark contrast to the other night when I'm talking to Karl-Anthony Towns about coming back to Minnesota and he's pouring his heart out about what the organization meant to him and how much, how emotional this is going to be. Clearly, the feelings are a little bit different from Julius Randle, and there's a lot of reasons why that's true. But I think today was just him, not angrily, but playfully saying, I'm not going to talk about the Knicks. And if you go back to when he came back to the Garden during the preseason, they gave him a video tribute. I don't even think I'm trying to remember. I don't even think he acknowledged it on the Jumbotron. Yeah, he just kept looking at his bench. And then I talked to him the next day. I said, what'd you think about it? He was like, oh, I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't even know what was happening until my son showed it to me. So he's, he's detached himself from the organization right now. And I think like I said, there are a lot of reasons for that. And, he's going to come out whatever the number that Vegas is putting out there for shot attempts, I bet the over.
This is what Bryan said. Bryan said the same thing. He said he would go look at that over for that too. He said
I can tell you what it is. I can tell you what it is in a second.
What is it?
I'll tell you what it is. I remember I was a little surprised that the Knicks were +2.5. But in terms of Julius Randle points, I mean, the over-under for even the first quarter is up. We'll get to that in a second. For the game, it's just 19.5 Julius Randle in this game.
I bet the over. Now, there's also the possibility that he's going to want to kill the narrative that he's selfish and go out there and just keep passing. I mean, I'm not trying to get in his head, but if I were a betting man, I'd bet the over on the points and I bet the over on the shot attempts.
The assists are 3.5. That's it.
I bet the over on that too. I mean, I think he's going to have the ball in his hands.
You can do points plus assists, which is going to be
I would do all
23,
that because
24.
I think Edwards understands that this is a big game for Julius Randle and he's going to feed him the ball.
I think the same thing.
I'm intrigued. Now that could be really good, or that could end up really bad. Like I said, that could go two ways. It could be really good or really bad. Steph, you talked to Kat about this in his return to Minneapolis. Obviously, this is going to be very emotional for him, even at some points, a place he played for years. He's high up in the rankings in a lot of categories for the Timberwolves. What's his mindset heading into this game back against his former team, the team that drafted him?
Yeah, I mean, so in the history of the Timberwolves, that's a shorter history than most franchises. I think me and you were both alive when they were introduced to the NBA, right? It was like 92. I was 12 years old. I remember it was them and the Raptors, I think, at the same time. But it's basically Kevin Garnett is number one and Karl-Anthony Towns is number two. I mean, that's franchise history. I don't think there's much debate about that. And he was there for 9 years, and 9 years in the NBA is a very long time. So you're right. It's going to be emotional. Having talked to him, he really defended his play and his time out there. He said, I gave it everything I possibly could, and I gave it even more than I thought I could. He questioned whether, the crowd there will cheer for him or what, he didn't know how they're going to react. I think it's it's pretty clear that they're going to cheer him. There's going to be a standing ovation and a video tribute. Remember, he didn't leave in free agency. He didn't demand a trade. He was traded. And in large part, it was because of a salary dump. You know, he signed a contract that they offered him. He signed a max deal. And the organization signed a bunch of other players, and they were in a position where they didn't want to be in salary cap hell. So they basically traded him for that reason. There were other reasons too, but I think that was the main one. I think the fans understand that. He did a lot of losing in his time there. There was a lot of losing, but he ended on a high note, getting to the Western Conference Finals. So I think the reaction for him is going to be very positive, and I think it's going to be emotional for him. I mean, remember his final moment with the franchise after they got eliminated from the Western Conference Finals. He started blowing kisses at the crowd. So that's the kind of personality he is, and I expect it to be similar when he comes back tomorrow.
I wonder if he's going to have that same energy and want to have a big game, kind of like Julius Randle will. Maybe it's not as personal, so I get that part, but it's just I wonder what his energy will be like for this game. I find that kind of interesting. The Knicks haven't played since Sunday, right? And then before that, they played was last Wednesday against Atlanta. So they've had a lot of, as you know, Steph, they got some extra practice time. How good is that for this team at this point of the season as they're trying to improve themselves defensively?
Yeah, I mean, it's important. Thibodeau, for his reputation of playing guys a lot, and his starters have had a lot of minutes. That's a separate conversation about the lack of depth on this team. But he does not practice much. You know, if there is only one day off between games, they're not going to practice that day. If there's 2 days off between games, he's going to just practice that second day. Now you have a situation, and I got to do the math again, but I think they're only played one game in the last week, maybe one game in 6 days or 2 games in 6 days or 2 games in a week. I don't know what it was, but they've got a bunch of days off. They practice 2 days consecutive. That does not happen in the Thibodeau regular season. And this is all because of the NBA Cup schedule. And you have a team that has some new pieces, and Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. So to be able to get this kind of practice time together and be able to get this kind of cohesion going that they absolutely need, I think it's important for sure.
Yeah, and NBA teams as a whole don't really practice as much as previous generations either. So I mean, that's another conversation for another day. But I wonder stylistically, because we've seen teams who are defensive minded or just defend very well, give the Knicks some problems where their offense, which has been great in totality, hasn't been able to overcome it. Minnesota's defense is now 4th after starting off the year a little bit sluggish. They seem to figure some things out on that end. Just from a matchup standpoint, how problematic is that for the Knicks, given that their offense has, in a couple different instances, at home against the Pistons and at home against the Hawks, has kind of failed to bail them out of these situations where other teams are really hunkering down defensively?
So you said, sorry, the question is, how much of a problem is Minnesota's defense for the Knicks?
Now that it's rounded into shape, yes.
Gotcha. I think that it's going to be an interesting matchup, the Rudy Gobert versus Cat matchup. I'm totally intrigued to see that because Rudy Gobert is a rim protector who is going to have to get out on the perimeter against Karl-Anthony Towns. We know Karl-Anthony Towns is going to want to bring him to the three-point line.
Yep.
How that changes the whole dynamic, how that changes, the Rudy Gobert's ability to be the number one rim protector in the NBA, which he is. I mean, the guy was a, multiple-time defensive player of the year for a reason. I understand he can't catch passes, but he can just block a shot.
Yeah.
So I think that this is going to be a game of chess in terms of where Rudy Gobert is going to be, who they put on Karl-Anthony Towns. Because one thing we've seen is when the Knicks have problems is when you have a player who's small and able to switch on Karl-Anthony Towns like Dillon Brooks did. I mean, Dillon Brooks gave them fits because when you have the pick and roll with Rick Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, and Dillon Brooks says, you know what, I'm just going to switch on you, Karl-Anthony Towns, and you can't back me down. It doesn't matter that you have this tremendous height advantage. I'm interested to see, how the Knicks and Timberwolves play that chess game because Rudy Gobert is really the big difference maker defensively and where he's going to be. If he's able to be in the paint and be that rim protector that he can be, I think the Knicks are going to have a ton of problems. They're certainly not going to be able to drive like they're used to.
We got a comment from Nostalgic Nick that says Randle is guarding Cat, which I was thinking about, okay, who is sort of the Cat matchup there? If Rudy Gobert is just going to be forced to stretch out onto the perimeter, I guess Randle makes some sense because Jaden McDaniels might be a little too weak, given that he's hardly 200 pounds. I don't even think he's 200 pounds, as a matter of fact. Do you think it's actually going to be a Randle versus Cat like matchup?
No, I don't think it's going to be the start. I think, well, because then you ask the question, who is Rudy going to guard? Is he going to guard Josh Hart? I guess if you're going to, that's the whole problem with having a guard in a 5-out system is you have to defend everybody on the perimeter. Josh Hart is probably the guy the least reliable 3-point shooter in the lineup. So if you're going to hide him on somebody, it would be Josh Hart. I don't think that's a matchup that Minnesota wants to do right now.
Yeah, because the danger is when Hart puts it on the floor and how good he is, especially in like 4-on-3 situations. Right. And as a passer, that's where he becomes really dangerous in those situations. So I don't see that either. I think you see Gobert start on Cat. I'm with you on that stuff. We all see Nostalgic Nick saying Cat's going for 40. Well, Knicks fans would like to see that. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. Steph, I want to talk to you about Landry Shamet. Returns to play this week with the Westchester Knicks. Tibbs has talked about him a lot the past couple of days. Could we see Landry Shamet soon? What is the steps that Tibbs needs to see, the organization needs to see before they could re-sign him and he's back in a Knicks uniform?
So I'm going to be honest with you. I did not watch his game in Westchester. I woke up early for a flight this morning. I have not given Landry Shamet much thought. But
Come on, Steph. I thought you had time for the G League. I thought you had time for the G League.
Honestly, it's fair. It's fair enough. It's fair enough.
I didn't have time for the G League yesterday. But listen, I think there was a reason why they signed him. He was going to be a part of their original rotation. He obviously had that really tough injury in preseason that you fell for him. I mean, the guy was on a non-guaranteed contract that was basically guaranteed to be guaranteed if he just stayed healthy. And he just got hurt. I think it was the second to last preseason game.
Yep.
But the Knicks feel enough about him where they kept him around. They re-signed him in order to monitor his progression. And if he can play, they're gonna bring him back. I mean, that's been the whole point of having him stick around. I don't know where he is in terms of his health. I don't know. Do you guys know how he played for Westchester, how he did?
He hit a couple threes in that game. I know that. It was two 3-pointers he hit in that game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and the G League showcase.
10 points, 4 of 10, 2 threes. Yeah.
All right, it's not bad. The G League showcase is coming up. That's going to be a big moment for him. So I think we're just going to keep monitoring that. The Knicks' depth is a huge problem. It's a huge problem. Thibodeau doesn't trust anybody past Miles McBride. He's playing Precious Achiuwa, it feels like begrudgingly. I think he'll throw a campaign out there, obviously, but the starters are playing a ton of minutes. And a lot of that is a product of how this roster was created. Listen, when the reason that they traded for Karl-Anthony Towns by basically sacrificing all their financial flexibility, what that left them with is you have to fill out the roster with rookies, with second-round picks, with guys who are two-ways, this kind of stuff. So this is what you're dealing with. And the Knicks have been very fortunate to have good health, because if you had one injury to OG Anunoby, or you had one injury to Josh Hart, and I know Mikal Bridges never gets injured, but then you're asking yourself, how can they sustain that? They don't have the depth to do that. So they've been fortunate, and the starters have been playing a ton of minutes, but certainly Landry Shamet.
What about Landry Fields? Going back there, Steph.
Yeah, I was all over.
That's a tremendous Freudian slip.
Yeah,
that is
not Landry Fields. It was Landry Shields. But anyway, Landry Shamet. If he comes back, that would be a tremendous, acquisition for them.
Steph, let me ask you this, because you talked about, and we can see it. People who are around the team, you covering the team, fans watching, that Tibbs hasn't trusted anybody else. Is there somebody on the roster you think that he should be trusting or giving more minutes to? Is there a guy who should maybe get a little bit more of a shot? Just from you who's around the team every day, is there a guy? Because it's one thing to say he's not trusting guys. Mm-hmm. It's just like, okay, well, who's the guy you should be trusting? Not saying that you're saying that, just questioning it out loud. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm careful with that because I don't see them at practice. And, I
Right.
talk to different people around the team. And, one thing I was surprised by that happened just because of the way Thibodeau was talking him up all the time about all the important little things that he's doing that don't, translate to the box score was Jericho Sims, and the way he was helping out defensively in the paint. And then, what happened was President Chua came back, and then the leash that Jericho Sims had was basically reduced to nothing. If he made a mistake, Tibbs was immediately looking at the bench and subbing him out. That's hard to play like that.
Right.
And, I understand Jericho Sims has very limited offensive ability, and he looks very lost out there on the offensive side of the ball. But I don't think that, putting him in the rotation, putting him in the starting lineup sometimes, then taking him completely out and saying if you make one mistake, you're not going to play at all. I think that's just ruining a guy's ability that you might need down the line. So, I think that's one of those development things that Thibodeau really struggles with. We saw with Obi Toppin express some frustration with that situation, having a quick hook and all that. So that's just one player and one situation that I kind of, scratch my head with over.
Nah, I think that's fair. Go ahead, Bryan.
Last thing for me, is it bad or worrisome that we're not just us, but in general, I think a lot of people interested in the Knicks are talking about this. Are we putting too much of an emphasis on Landry Shamet and his potential impact? Like, is that a worrisome sight as to where we are with the bench unit right now?
Yeah, and I think it is. I mean, this is a guy who is a career role player, a career journeyman who dislocated his shoulder in preseason, and you're hoping that he will come back to kind of save the bench. That's kind of an indictment on where the team's roster is right now, just in terms of the depth. But again, this was predictable, just based on what the Knicks had to do to get Karl-Anthony Towns, the kind of cap gymnastics that they had to go through, where you're talking about, everybody's clamoring for Ariel Hukporti to play. He was like a late second round pick who's a rookie from Germany, right, who he had a meniscus tear in the before the combine. So, he's going through his own recovery stuff, and he's played a lot better, but this is the kind of situation that the Knicks in. You're talking about second round picks making this huge impact. That usually doesn't happen for NBA teams. You usually don't have second round pick rookies stepping in and playing big minutes. So the fact that you're asking for that or relying on that or what have you, that's an indictment on where they are right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they address that. We'll get into more trade talk, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. Last thing for me, Steph, you talked about this at the beginning of the month. The last time you were on with us for the live show, you were like, hey, this is a month where the Knicks should clean up, right? They have a pretty light schedule. After the Timberwolves, they got the Pelicans, Raptors, Spurs, Magic, Wizards to close the month. The Wizards again in a back-to-back. Mm-hmm. Is it important that the Knicks get this win tomorrow night against the Timberwolves to take a step forward in beating another quality opponent after Orlando? And then how important is it also that they close this month out strong and take care of the teams that they're supposed to beat?
So all the games you just listed, this one tomorrow is the toughest.
Yep.
And mm-hmm. I think that it would go a long way, because one criticism you might have in the Knicks record, and it's pretty good, is that they haven't beaten the greatest teams, and they played a lot of shorthanded teams. I mean, the team they beat in Orlando, you could say it was a gritty win. It was, but they didn't have their two best players, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. So the Minnesota Timberwolves are at full strength. The Knicks are at full strength. You have a lot of storylines with former teammates going against each other. This is a big game. This is the game. I know you can look at the Christmas game because it's on Christmas and Victor Wembanyama and all that stuff. But this is the game that I would have circled for the rest of this month to say, all right, well, where is this team at? And it's kind of an indictment on Adam Silver's NBA, where you still have, despite the play-in tournament and all this stuff, where you still have tanking teams. Because, with the play-in, there's going to be 20 teams that now have a chance at the postseason, which means only 10 teams are not going to have a chance at the postseason. And of those 10 teams, it's only December. We already know who like 7 of them are. And the Knicks are going to play like 4 of them for the rest of the month. They got the Wizards twice. the Pelicans, and there was another terrible team mixed
Raptors.
in there. The Raptors. So there you go. The Knicks should clean up for the rest of this month. But this game against the Timberwolves will show me something about where they are at, especially after we talked about it, after having so much practice time, after being able to key in on this one opponent that everybody knows is a big game. This game's going to show me a lot.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think this game is going to show a lot, and then how they play. Honest for me is how they play for the rest of the month. Show something to the fans in this game. Show something the rest of the month. Take care of the business they got to take care of. That is Stefan Bondy. Steph, I'm going to make sure Grady gets you that spot to go to. Then you got to go to New Orleans, where there's plenty of great places to eat. You're going to eat well in New Orleans.
I know. See that you talking about packing. I got to pack. Yeah, I got to pack from Minnesota and New Orleans, so I'm all over the place.
That's terrible packing.
I didn't think of that.
That's the worst. You got to make sure you have a heavy coat, and then you get to New Orleans, you're not even going to need the coat.
Exactly.
And then you might get off the plane back in New York, and you have no idea what the weather's going to be.
There you go.
It could be 50. It could be 20. You have no idea.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
It's all over the place. But
and then I get home and I'm sick, and my wife's like, "We'll do this and do that. You haven't been home for a week." I'm like, "I'm sick. I was in mismatching weather for a week." So that's my life right now.
And that's why
you're asking me, did I watch Landry Shamet in the
This is why New Orleans shouldn't be in the Western Conference, by the way. This is exactly why. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Hey, when the expansion happens, they might switch.
Yeah, maybe.
That could happen. Steph, let me know what spot you go. Let me know what spot you go to out there in Minneapolis. Enjoy the food, enjoy the weather, what you can of it. Don't get sick. All right, just don't get sick. I'll talk to you next week, brother. Thank you. That's Stefan Bondy, beat writer for the New York Post, covering the Knickerbockers, not watching Landry Shamet in the G League. We're good. Bryan, I know you got to get out of here really quickly, so we're going to get through.
I just want to let everyone know.
Yes.
I just bet Julius Randle over 19.5 points tomorrow, plus 100.
So
plus money. I was like,
you were all in on Julius Randle over. Steph was all in on it.
Look, I'll have some Knicks props too. I might take the Knicks money line because there's some good plus money on that. And I think they might win that game, but we'll see. We'll see.
All right, before we're gonna wrap and get out of here, we want to thank everybody for checking in. Nostalgic Nick, we see you. Parish Duggar, is that Duggar? Yes, Parish Duggar. Appreciate.
I hope it is.
Checking in. Yeah, we don't want to be something else. That would not be good. Also, we saw our guy earlier. I didn't shout him out. Knicks 100 a game, bringing the energy. Thank you for checking in. We appreciate that. Thank you for rocking with us. We had Michael Grady on earlier, Stefan Bondy joining us. But you know how we always close the show out. We do it with Real or Not, a little game that Bryan and I like to play. Bryan, we talked about Landry Shamet. And I think Steph makes a good point, right? In the fact that some people, not saying everybody out there, some of y'all are looking at Landry Shamet to come here and save the bench.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's a good thing.
A little worried about that.
I wouldn't, if you want him to save the bench, I think that might be a little bit much. Okay. But my question for Bryan this week on Real or Not, the Knicks need Landry Shamet to crack their rotation. Yay or nay, real or not? Do they need this to happen? Operative word being need in that sentence.
You want this to be not real because you don't want to put so much emphasis on Landry Shamet's importance, but this might be real because of the shooting he could potentially provide. And he's a career 38% three-point shooter. Wasn't very good last year, but he was in Washington. He probably didn't care. Like, like how inspired could you be playing basketball with Jordan Poole, with all due respect? I think this is worrisome that this is probably real. Is where I'm at, Dex.
Yeah, I think it's worrisome if you have to feel that way, right? I think, but he had a solid preseason and training camp from all accounts.
To be clear, it's not to say he can't, want him to be helpful, but
no, I got you.
Like,
I'm
if Landry Shamet's your seventh or eighth man after Deuce and Precious Achiuwa, if you need that to happen to stabilize your bench, that.
Yo,
I'd be a little worried.
If you need that to happen, maybe your bench ain't really that stable.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's a little worried.
I don't feel like I have to get deeper on this. I'm not saying, again, I want to be very clear. Not saying he can't help. Not saying the Knicks need depth. They need help. We're not saying that. I'm just saying if that's going to stabilize your bench, it might tell you got other needs and other ways you have to find depth, which is something we are going to get into on this show and throughout New York Got Game as the season goes on. I don't want to get too heavy in trade talk. I know trade season just opened up. We are going to get into this. That is Brian's bag.
The real trade season is January
look at his face.
15th.
Look at his face. He can't even wait. He can't wait. All right. Other one. I was going to go one player on this. You convinced me to go two, and I agreed with you in putting this. Cat and Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns and Brunson. Should both players be in early MVP discussions? Now, despite Knicks fans jumping out the window, the team is 16-10. They've won 16 out of 26 games, folks. They do not have a terrible record. Karl-Anthony Towns has played really well. Brunson, after a slow start, has been really good, especially in terms of dishing the ball. Should both players be in early MVP discussion? Knicks are third in the East with that 16-10 record. So what do you say to this?
We need a cutoff point. Early discussions is what? This person has to be top what? 5, 8, 10?
To me, you're not in the MVP discussion if you're not in the top 5.
Okay,
5 is a discussion.
I would say this is not real. And Vegas would back me up on this. Not to say that it matters, but and Vegas would back me up on this. Jokic is the favorite. He's actually minus money right now. I don't think that's gonna stay that way for that long, but that's just where we are right now. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is second. This is as of earlier this week.
Giannis is 3.
Luka is 3. Giannis is 4. Giannis has probably jumped ahead now with an NBA Cup title, but this is probably still the top 5 as of this recording. Tatum is up there. Anthony Davis is up there. You have Anthony Edwards. You have Donovan Mitchell. You don't get to Jalen Brunson until you're at 8 and 9, actually. And Karl-Anthony Towns is 2 spots below at 11, right outside of top 10. Kevin Durant's also in the mix. He's missed some games, but he's back now. So I would say no. Top 5, no. If the discussion is top 10, yes. If the discussion is top 5, no.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Here's where I think this could change. Win tomorrow. Play damn good basketball through the rest of the month. Both those guys still have really good numbers. Now you put one of them will push the top 5. I think if that happens.
Well, can they get there? I would say at least one of them, yes. But I think you laid out the formula. If we're talking at the end of the month, or not even at the end of the month, but maybe a little bit before that. But over the next week and a half, and they have 20 wins already. And they get to 20, if they're a 3 seed by the end of the month, then I would probably look at it and be like, all right, we got to start talking about Brunson or Cat or both.
Yeah.
I don't think neither are going to win the award, though.
I think if they finish this, I don't think so either, but I think if they finish this month strong, and let's say they end up at the end of the month, they're 10 or 11 games above 500, and they're still third in the East, and the numbers are still strong, then I think one of the two of them are pushing, knocking on the conversation.
But real or not, impromptu one. Cat and Brunson will make All NBA this year. That one is kind of that one could happen. That one is absolutely on the table.
We're gonna have to. This is the impromptu one, but this is one we probably dive in again.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say real.
Yeah, I might.
I'm inclined to say real here. I think both of them could have. I mean, I think right now, Cat is a lock. Now,
yes.
And I think Brunson will make. Yeah, I think they both make it.
Is Cat? Isn't it positionless now? So I was going to say
it's positionless now,
but it doesn't matter. Yeah,
but
if you're saying Cat and Brunson are 2 of the 15 best players in the NBA this season, definitely offensively. But the MVP odds will reflect that since they're both sniffing around the top 10.
Hence my point.
So
there. All right, last one that we have, Josh Hart. We're going to talk about him. Will he finish the season with at least a 65% field goal percentage on 2-point shots? Right now, this is stupid, folks. He's shooting 70%. 70% on 2-point shots. Listen, Josh Hart, one of the best finishers in the game. You're dropping him down 5 percentage points. 65 is stupid, guys. For a guy who's 6'4", not 7'4", 6'4". What do you say?
He has shot at best in his career from 60.1%. And he's done it twice. He did it in 2021-22 and 2022-23 back-to-back seasons. And in both years, he spent he was traded. Both years he was with multiple teams, which is interesting enough. So this year he's already 10 plus percentage points better than he's ever been from 2. So I don't think he's going to stay at 70. 65 is on the table, especially if he keeps driving in transition. The way that the Knicks have been able to open up these lanes too, because he's playing with so much gravity offensively around him. Jalen Brunson, you got to account for. Karl-Anthony Towns, you got to account for. Mikal Bridges, say what you want, but you still got to account for him. And OG Anunoby, especially if he's wide open from 3 in the corner or wherever, really, you got to account for him. So that kind of opens up the avenue for Josh Hart to get these drives and be somewhat explosive in getting to the rim and at least get foul calls, of which I think he could have more free throw attempts. But 65% is absolutely on the table. I think this could absolutely happen. It's a high number, though.
It's
I get
still
it.
a high number.
I wouldn't bet on it, but I'm like it can't happen.
I could see this where he finishes like 63.5%. Can't you see that happening?
Yeah.
I can see that happening here.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for it. Listen, I'm always going to root for some like ridiculous statistical anomalies that you may not ever see again. I'm here for that. I think he comes close. I think he just falls just short. I hope I'm wrong, though. I hope I'm wrong.
He was 51% from 2 last year. He's at 70% now. He's 20 percentage points better. Like that can't be sustainable, you know. But I do think like career year from 2, given the gravity, like
I can see that.
He's never played on a team where these are the offensive options.
Yeah.
Like that you have to account. Where 4 other guys you have to account for.
And Josh Hart is so good. The thing that makes him so good in the ability to finish is not just him finishing in transition. A lot of it is his cutting, his movement without the ball. He's so good at that and reading spots and where he can cut. He's such a good role player. Josh Hart's one of my favorite role players to watch in the NBA. Okay, I'm gonna say not real for this. It's the number's too high.
I'm gonna say not real also.
Numbers too high.
A lot. I'll say real for what you said. 63 and a half. I'm there.
I can see it. I can see 63 and a half. You know what you're gonna be pissed about? If it's 64 and a half, we're gonna be pissed. Now we're gonna be on Josh Hart 2-point field goal percentage watch for the entire season. This is what we do here on this show. All right, that does it for real or not. We're gonna get out of here. Nostalgic Nick, you guys live a life. Yes, we do. We live a good life. Nostalgic Nick, thank you, man. You are a legend for joining us here on the show.
I don't know about that good life talk. You seen the stock market today? Whew.
Hey, every day you are alive and breathing. It is good. That's all I'm saying. I'm giving some positivity to the people.
Yeah,
we're here. We're breathing. We get to enjoy some Knicks basketball. Hopefully tomorrow, God willing, or whomever you believe in as a higher power or don't. Yeah. Whatever, doesn't matter.
Sure.
The universe, the blessings, just take it. It's good. So we'll see. Appreciate everybody for checking in. We'll be back next week. Not sure what date we're going to be doing next week yet. We will give you more of an update on that. Obviously, we will have a new show, weekly show on Monday. Jeff Johnson from Knicks Film School, who does Casual Fridays, he will be my guest. We're going to have something a little special with a Christmas theme for the Knicks this week. We'll be doing that. Also, be joined by Carolina Teague, who covers the Spurs, to help me preview the Knicks-Spurs game. That should be a fun one. Knicks-Spurs on Christmas, nice and early for you folks before some of you might tune over to the NFL. But, you know, that's what y'all do because you love football. I'm going to keep it NBA all day. That's what I'm going to do. Keep it NBA all day. Bryan, we won't do this again until after Christmas. Have yourself a Merry Christmas. I hope you're cooking. I hope that you are.
Might Christmas Eve, actually. Christmas Eve, yes.
Christmas Eve. It's good. It's going to be a good Christmas. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Our producer, Jeff, everybody, our whole New York Post sports family. It's going to be a great Christmas for everybody. We'll see if it's a great one for the Knicks. Like I said, we'll have more details on when we're back with our next live show for next week. We'll have more information for you guys on that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting. If you like the show, please hit the like button, share, subscribe. If you didn't miss this out in the show, you can catch it on all digital streaming platforms. If you want to hear the audio version, you can check that out as well, too. He is Bryan Fonseca. And I see a last-minute comment coming here. NBA all day. I like that. No, don't. You don't have to go unless you want to go see Beyonce, which I fully support and I understand that. But outside of that,
I got boxing Saturday.
So. Now I will be tuning into a little bit of NFL because my Steelers play that day, playing 3 games, 11 days, which is
fantasy football playoffs also.
But yeah, so I will tune in. But it's an NBA day on Christmas, so I see you. 2 Knicks chicks, I see you. NBA all day, like those blue and orange hearts. There you go. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how we keep it doing. Appreciate everybody checking in. Bryan, be well. We will talk soon. For Bryan Fonseca, I'm Dexter Henry. Our fantastic producer, Jeff Stansbury. We'll catch you next time on New York Got Game, Knicks Weekly Live. Peace, y'all. Merry Christmas.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.